Welcome back, everyone, to another episode review to Night of the Nine Kingdoms. Now you finally know why I kept saying that all season. You know, I've been doing Thrones content on YouTube for over 10 years, and every now and then a casual fan will Google up the map for Westeros and say the exact same thing Egg says to Duncan, and every time you have to scramble to explain, well, you know, when the first Targaryen king conquered Westeros, there was actually 7, and then this happened, yada yada yada, and here we are. At the end of the day, ultimately, it just sounds cool, and 7 is just a very important number in the series, so let's leave it at that. But episode 6, I'll be real with you guys, I really liked it a lot. It's actually my favorite episode of the entire season 1, and it's mostly because of how it ended and why that's important, especially in today's age of television with how they do things. I'll get to that in a minute, but of course, as always, before we unpack everything, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, yada yada. You know the drill. Let's get into all of this. So of course, let's get this out of the way first. On Twitter, I said how we'd be getting a brand new character in the final episode. It'll be a queen, and this caused everyone to freak out. People were saying how, oh, it's a Martell queen, and yada yada yada. Actually, no. What I said was technically true from a certain point of view. Beesbury's funeral has got to be one of the most metal things I've ever seen in this series. And you know for a fact they were in the writer's room, and someone came up with that idea randomly, and it clicked. They're like, yep, that's it. We gotta do it. The Targaryens, they cremate their dead with fire because, of course. The Velaryons bury their dead in water because they're sailors. Of course, all that makes sense. And now, House Beesbury because bees. That's it. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. And honestly, keep the tradition going. Every spin-off show needs to have something like this where a noble house has a special funeral rite for their dead relating to their sigil. Fuck it, let's do it. As for Lyonel Baratheon, opening up the episode with him was great. I loved him shitting on the Maester. I loved him inviting Dunk to be his best bro forever, where they go off and fight and travel. It'll be the Duncan Stag show instead. My body is prepared for that. But what I really liked was his anti-Targaryen rant. It wasn't just Raymun who was a major hater. It was Lyonel too. And the Baratheons are a great house. It really does set up how the Targaryen dynasty eventually falls. This has been something showrunner Ira Parker has said his intention was with the show, and how secretly the noble houses of Westeros are getting fed up with House Targaryen. And honestly, without their dragons, they're really not able to command that much loyalty that they once did. Or maybe they never were and the dragons just kept everyone in line. It really makes what Robert Baratheon said in Game of Thrones resonate a bit more.
I've got 7 kingdoms to rule. 1 king, 7 kingdoms. Do you think honor keeps them in line? Do you think it's honor that's keeping the peace? It's fear. Fear and blood.
As for our boy Raymun Fossaway, easily one of the best characters in the entire franchise, all 3 shows included. And it's not because he's the strongest or the smartest or anything like that, but because he was there. And that's really the type of person you want in your life. He showed up when he was needed, and he was there, and he did the right thing because he had Dunk's back, and that's just who he is. Again, I love Lyonel Baratheon this season, but Raymun takes bestest of friend of ward of the decade, hands down. I really hope we see him again in the future, but also, if we don't, that's fine too. I would rather Dunk meet just as many cool and awesome people on his adventures instead of just reintroducing people we've met before. If anything, I'd love to see him in a cameo role in the future when Dunk is eventually given position as a Kingsguard, or when Egg becomes king or marries or whatever. And yeah, like, I don't think we need Raymun again, but if he shows up, that would be okay too. Speaking of which, Little Egg. One of the things I've been saying about him all season is that by episode 6, you'll know what I was referring to in regards to Ira Parker's favorite theory, and that theory is that Egg, when he becomes king, will go crazy trying to hatch dragons. We already see a bit of darkness in him there when he tries to kill his brother. Aerion sucks, sure, but for a child to be willing to go that far, I think it sets the theory up fairly well, especially when you combine the fortune teller scene and the idea that it's such a George R.R. Martin way to end a character's story, you know? To grow up with them and you like them, and then all of a sudden something goes down and, well, yeah, they meet a tragic end. We'll discuss this and more on the Game of Thrones podcast, but also, I know some of you might disagree with me on the whole egg theory, so leave your thoughts down below. I'd be curious to read them. Lastly, let's talk about that Maekar change. The change from the book to the show regarding Maekar has been one of the more controversial changes, but honestly, I loved it. I think I like show Maekar more than book Maekar, and it's simply because he's such a flawed character. Let me ask you guys this. How many times have you met someone in real life like this? They want to do what's right, they want to do what's best for their kids, they want the best for their kids, and they try, but ultimately, life happens and you roll the die and you can't control how they turn out. No parent out there wants to raise a drunken loser or a sociopath, and maybe a lack of parental guidance is a factor, and perhaps you do everything in your power to be as good of a parent as you can be, and still it's not good enough. That makes sense to me. It feels real. It feels grounded. He hates that his son is such a piece of shit, but he's there for him anyway, and that's the best we can hope for. I don't have any children, so I can't speak much to this, but if I did, even if my kid fucked up, I'd still be on that battlefield backing them up, screaming, my boy, when I see them get hurt. Even though they'd probably deserve it given the same situation. Maekar isn't the anime character with that one-note personality like he is in the books, all about honor and all that. But he's also not dumb. This is something a few people have mentioned during Dunk's hearing about him not knowing what a Trial of Seven is. He just doesn't care about Andal tradition, which, yeah, that makes sense. Targaryens see themselves as separate, and why would they care about this? Of course, Aegon cares because he's probably a student of history, and his favorite Targaryen king was Maegor, and, well, again, they haven't seen a Trial of the Seven over 100 years. I'm sure that's a show continuity error because, Maegor did the Trial of the Seven, but still, to me, it makes perfect and utter sense that Egg is his last chance to prove he's not a fuck-up. That something from him, his legacy, isn't just king-slaying and crazy douchebags. Granted, his other son, Aemon, poor Aemon, often gets overlooked just because he's more bookish than anything, but still, Maekar not wanting Egg to go off with Dunk because he wants his family close to him, that makes sense to me. He loves his kids, and he still wants to try. And of course, that final scene. Perfect. Down to the last minute detail. I loved it, and I'll tell you why. That ending was just that. An ending. Even if we didn't get a season 2, which we are, but if we didn't, that would have been a nice one and done season. They go off on further adventures. The end. That's it. Of course, this is the ending of the source material, kinda. It just ends that way after they talk about the puppets and Dorne. But Sir Arlen being such a major focus of the series, more so than he was in the source material, and how he was always there with Dunk in the show, but now Dunk is a knight in his own right. It's time for Arlen to go. Such a sweet way to end right there. Even the post-credit scene, if you could call it that, with the reveal that Egg actually ran away and Maekar freaking out, it was mostly done for comedic purposes, but it worked. It really did. It was funnier than the diarrhea stuff we've gotten all season, and it fits with the characters perfectly. Again, if it was a one and done, it ends beautifully with the tone that season 1 set up. And I'm really sick of how television shows nowadays are being written as if the second half of the first season is just set up for the next. And yeah, we had some Easter eggs here and there for when Egg does eventually become king, but if anything, that's thrown in there for book fans, like little Easter eggs. The writers here, they adapted the story, took some liberties along the way, which worked out, but you can tell they weren't stretching things out so they'd have a job waiting for them with more seasons. You saw this with Alien Earth, how the writers there gave up halfway through and just dragged their feet to the finish line so they'd have more for next time. Nuh-uh. Season 1 here finished perfectly, and even if we didn't get another season, it would have been fine. It ended just the way it needed to, and I love that. But guys, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for sticking with me throughout the entire season. Of course, we'll be doing more Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones discussion throughout the year, leading up to House of the Dragon Season 3 and beyond, so be sure to click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all that and more. Also, be sure to check us out on social media, so you can follow us with what we're doing, all links in the description below. Once again, thank you so much for watching and supporting us, and I'll see you all next time. Baba Booey.